when the 49ers beat the Eagles kind of have crumbled since then. I know that they just won against the Giants, but they went down to the wire with the Giants, and they've been humiliated, which I feel like I'm allowed to say because the 49ers were just humiliated too. So ever since the 49ers kind of put the book out on Jalen Hurts, which is something that Nick Bosa said in
Mhm.
his post-game press conference or locker room press conference after that. He said, I put the book out on Jalen Hurts. This is how we beat him. Cowboys, pay attention. Now, do you think that the book is out on Brock Purdy? Do you think that the Ravens did something particular that caused him to throw these interceptions, that caused him to be so rattled, that caused the 49ers to struggle so much? Or did you see it as maybe just a really amped up Brock Purdy? Like, do you think that this was more the 49ers / Brock Purdy beating themselves? Or did you see it as the Ravens beat the 49ers and put out a game plan for the rest of the NFL?
I definitely think it was a mix of both in that game. I mean, we all got to give some credit to the Ravens, right? Like they went in there, they had a great game plan against the 49ers offense. They were extremely disciplined. They weren't biting into any motions. They really weren't reacting to it. It just seemed like they knew what the 49ers were going to try to do, and they had a plan for everything. So I do have to give credit to them, and that's definitely part of I think the reason that Purdy struggled a little bit to maybe refine his footing. But at the same time, they were moving the ball, in the first quarter and the first half. And so I do think, of course, Brock Purdy, getting into a bit of a rut with the turnovers did impact that as well. So it was a little bit of a two-way street on that. Now, as far as like the book being out on Brock Purdy and the 49ers, I think a lot of teams can look at what other teams did to beat a team, because like every team beats another team in the NFL. Like it happens every single week, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the team the following week is going to be able to do that exact same thing and then beat that same team. You know what I mean? And there's a reason for that. So what the Ravens were able to do, and even the Browns, they did it somewhat differently, but also somewhat the same. They have very talented defenses, and they're very talented at all three levels of the field. There wasn't really anything that I don't think there was one specific player that Kyle Shanahan was like, this is the guy we want to exploit in this matchup. Oftentimes there's
He
one
likes
guy, there's the microscope meme of Kyle Shanahan looking under the microscope, and he's looking at a linebacker or a safety, as a bad PFF grade or just looks terrible on tape, right? You can't I don't think I can find a guy on the Ravens who really was like a weak spot in that defense, right? So I don't think there was anything to exploit too much. And so this is what I'll say. The Ravens, the Browns being one of the best defenses in the league, they're unique in the fact that they were able to run this perfect game plan. They have the right personnel to run this game plan,
yeah,
and not every team is going to be able to execute that.
especially not the Commanders. I heard someone saying
Yeah.
that. They were like, we're going to see if Brock Purdy can bounce back because the Commanders were just given the game plan. And so if Brock Purdy can execute against the Commanders, then we know he learned. And I was like, I don't think that that's going to be the takeaway. I think that the Commanders are literally taking, we have one of their best players on our team, and the other best player that they have is now on the Bears. Um, do you we're not going to spend much time on that. Well, really quickly, Brock Purdy did say that he got a lot of treatment on his shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that he was told that these injuries can affect some people differently. He said going into the game, it didn't affect him, but then when he was hit, it did really hurt. Now he did make it really clear. He was like, "I was fully ready and wanted to go back into the game and fully healthy."
He was
So
cleared.
it was. That's not a question anymore. I think people maybe thought people were hypothesizing. Was he benched and maybe benched / taken out because it's the fourth quarter, you're down by multiple scores. Now they did get it pretty much. I mean, if Sam Darnold didn't throw an interception, they would have had it within one score of the game. Good to know that all the 49ers, it was so nice of Sam Darnold to make sure that Brock Purdy didn't feel alone in that. Did you hear my joke? I'm just gonna repeat it because I thought I was clever. But I said that Brock Purdy knew that the NFL loves quarterbacks, so that they were going to give the MVP award to him no matter what. And he went out there in that press conference and said Christian McCaffrey deserved it. So he threw a bunch of interceptions so that the media could pay attention to Christian McCaffrey. Oh, what a good
he's
guy.
a team player that way.
Such a team guy. That's what we need to be taking. Is the book out on Brock? Yeah, he's a gentleman. That's what we're taking away from this game. I'm when it comes to did the Ravens beat the Browns? When it comes to did the Ravens beat the 49ers more than the 49ers beat themselves? I think I agree with you. Like when it comes to looking ahead at other teams, having a good defense is something, and a quarterback that can optimize on offensive opportunities is definitely something that's going to go well. But I think that's, I don't know if that's like a book. To me, that's very obvious. Like if you have a great defense, it's going to be harder for the 49ers. If you have a star quarterback, it's going to be harder for the 49ers defense. I don't really think that that's like a plan that people can steal. I know the Commanders might want to, but they're not going to.
Right. And also, like, 49er fans should know that because the 49ers have been on the other end of it, having an elite defense. You remember 2019, even maybe last year. The 49ers have had times where they've made Hall of Fame quarterbacks look silly, right? And that's what really good defenses could do. And so that's why, like, the talk about all these people coming out of the woodworks and saying all these things about Brock Purdy and what they always thought about him. Oh, he's not very good, is crap to me because it's simply just a really good defense playing a good offense 9 times out of 10. Usually the really good defense is going to be able to, win the game or at least, stop your offense. Defenses win championships. There's a reason people say that.
Yeah. And this is going to be like a tough balance that Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan and Brian Greasy are all going to have to figure out together. But something that did concern me in the press conference, and maybe it was just because I think Brock Purdy is really good about showing humility, which is something that is very respectable. But I don't want him to, it seemed like, wasn't there a part of you that felt like he was like, I'm a game manager. I found out I'm a game manager. And I was like, no, Brock, you can be Mars too. Because he kept going to execute the game plan. The steps were there for me. I was doing too much. I can't do that. And I do think to win a Super Bowl, like, I'm glad. I mean, you're never glad about all these picks, but I'm glad that Brock Purdy has the confidence to try to make some of those throws. And like, I try not to do the thing where Shanahan said some of them aren't on him, because I also think he threw some picks that weren't caught up. So I think these things, luck ends up equaling out. But I do hope, I know we're gonna get to some haters, quote unquote, talking in a minute. And I know Cam Newton, and I found it funny. I like when people are petty, and I think the point of the sport is to banter. But Cam Newton kind of came out during the game with like an eye emoji and was like, so game manager or game changer. And then listening to that press conference, it felt like there was a little bit of Brock Purdy. And I know that people have talked about this before with Kyle Shanahan. Does he have a tendency to kind of beat down his quarterback a little bit? And I'm not saying we don't know behind the scenes, so I don't know what Kyle Shanahan has said or not said to Brock Purdy. Publicly, he's actually given Brock Purdy a good amount of grace, in my opinion. But I do think to win a Super Bowl, you need a quarterback that's going to believe that he can make that gotta have it throw. Now, if you're behind in the Super Bowl, you don't want a quarterback that's pressing so much that they continue to throw interceptions and that they're not just going down by down, executing the game plan. Because like we said, I think if they executed the game plan, even after 3 interceptions, they could have won the game. I honestly think if they would have just thrown 3 interceptions, they could have won the game. It felt, coming out of the half, I was like, if that
it was a close game
point where all of a sudden the Ravens were up, if they went from like 16 to like 30, and Brock Purdy threw an immediate interception after going 3 and out, like, it just wasn't a good moment for it was just it was not their day. But I do want to say, just while we're talking about is the book out on Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy's psyche, I don't want to completely beat out the confidence in him, because I think so much of that is positive. Obviously, I think he was more amped up. Like I wouldn't consider what he was doing confident. I think even though maybe he was being aggressive, I think that came from a kind of a skittish place. And I think sometimes confidence can be aggressiveness, but sometimes confidence can be taking a deep breath and being poised. I don't know if you had any comments on that. I just watched the press conference, so I'm thinking about different things he said, and I was thinking about Cam kind of making that comment. I think you need a game manager, but you need in this system, you want someone who's going to execute the game plan, but you also need someone who's going to optimize it and take it to a next level when necessary. And I hope that Brock Purdy isn't scared to do that in the future. And I don't think he will be. I think he looked really humble in this press conference, but what we've seen from him so far is that he can usually bounce back.
Yeah, I'm not worried about him being able to bounce back at all. I think like those types of performances and getting down on yourself is like a single game thing. And so like I said, it kind of just got out of hand for him, and he couldn't really regain his footing in that game. But I think every week is like a new slate. It's a new opportunity to have a different outcome to the week, right? And so I think that's what the Commanders kind of present to Brock Purdy this week, just a new opportunity to show, hey, like I could execute this offense. I'm not going to hurt this team. And Ashley, I actually think it's interesting that like Brock kind of admitted that some of the noise got to him, because I was kind of starting to wonder if like the MVP conversation was starting to get to him, and I didn't think it distracted him really, but him saying that makes me wonder if it kind of did. And maybe he was trying to upkeep his performance, and that's a lot of stress too, especially when you go into the game and you start turning the ball over, right? You're like, oh crap, like kind of what he was saying and you were saying at the beginning, like, oh man, like this is exactly what some people were saying I've always been, and this is not what other people say. Like you start playing those mind games with yourself. And so I'm kind of glad that the MVP conversation is out of the window for Brock Purdy, like virtually. Like I know a lot of 49er fans are gonna right. I know a lot of 49er fans are still going to make the case for Brock. But, ultimately that game on Monday night was enough to, I think, hurt his odds quite significantly. And so I think it takes some pressure off of Brock and Kyle, the rest of the team as well.
I actually really agree with that. I like that perspective. I think I remember it might have been you who said something similar about Christian McCaffrey when his streak was broken with the touchdowns. And it wasn't that like it's bad to get touchdowns, just like it's not bad to try to be in the MVP conversation. But it is kind of like if your ultimate goal is getting that Lombardi, then make sure that if the game plan calls for you not to be the hero, you're not thinking, okay, well, people think I'm a game manager, so I need to prove to them that I am more than that in this primetime game. It's like, no, do whatever you need to do to win, because that's actually what's most important. This silly award isn't